So as I was reading the book of Matthew, I was in chapter 25 where it talks about the three servants and how their master gave them each a certain amount of talents. And the first servant received 5 talents, the second one 2 talents, and the third servant received 1 talent. The first two went and multiplied their talents, while the third servant had buried his talent out of fear. So when their master came back, because he went away, he came back and he just asked the servants, like, what did you do with what I gave you, with the talents I gave you? And the first 2 servants showed they multiplied it, and the master was pleased. And the third servant just said he buried it out of fear, and the master was really angry with him. And God was just showing me that, like, what are we doing with our gifts? What are we doing with our gifts, with our talents, with the abilities that God has given us? Like, are we using them, or have we buried them out of fear? Do we know how to use them? Like, what are you using your gifts for? If you recognize your gifts, are you using them for the kingdom of God, or are you using them for the kingdom of darkness? Like, how are you using your gifts? And we as people, God gives us these gifts for a reason. You don't have those gifts just to let them lie and collect dust. These abilities, these talents are to expand the kingdom of God, to help others. Are you using your gifts? Do you recognize your gifts? Looking at your passions, what are you passionate about? Ask God about those passions. Like, how can you use these passions to expand the kingdom? We as people are responsible for how we use these gifts, these resources, these opportunities that God has blessed us with. And when God sees that we are using these gifts, these talents, these abilities, He'll bless us with more. God says those who are faithful with the gifts that He gave them, He'll reward them. God will entrust you with more when He sees that you are working with what you have. And those who are not using their gifts out of fear, God did not give us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. God didn't give you that fear. That's the enemy wanting you to let your gifts lie and collect dust and not use them to the glory of God. Don't be useless in what God is calling you to do. So my question is, how are you using your gifts? Are you using your gifts? Do you recognize your gifts? Your talents, your abilities, the resources around you, the opportunities that you have been presented with. Like I said, look in your passions. It's something there. God gave each person in this world a gift. Each person a talent, each person an ability, each person resources, each person passions. We all have them. But how are you going to use yours for God's kingdom? And there are some people in this world who have a lot of gifts, a lot of talents, and they're using it for the kingdom of darkness. They're using it to promote sin. That's not pleasing to God. That's not what God calls us to do. We are supposed to use our gifts that God has given us for His glory. So just think about that. And if you don't know your talents, you don't know where your abilities lie, just ask God, like, God, what talents have you given me? Show me. Align me with the right people who can help me. Don't be like the third servant and just bury your talent. Because when we're standing before God and He says, my child, what did you do with what I gave you? What are you going to say? What's going to be your answer? No matter what the talent is, it can be used for the kingdom of God. It can be used for good. But you have to use it. But be like the first 2 servants and let your gifts multiply. Use your gifts. Your gifts will make room for you. But you have to use them first.